Beast. Right, we've just come back from Standing in the Park, so I'm going to hand you over to Marty in a minute, because on one of my previous videos I asked for requests, and somebody said tales of the supernatural and paranormal ghost stories, so Marty's got a bit better ones than me. Yeah, the Standing in the Park, it was really nice, it was low key, it was lovely, it was just local people who don't buy into what they're being told the same as we don't. And there's a few friendships made and a few chats, and I got to know a couple of people, and it was great. So it was all positive. The best part about it for me, there was a lady who sat on a bench viewing proceedings, and she seemed very timid. She didn't quite know what to do, and when she noticed a lull in the conversation, she kind of beckoned to me and whispered, and I couldn't quite hear what she was saying. But what she said was she was delighted that people were out being human and normal. So I said, well, come and join us then, and she did. And she was a truther as well. Again, she hasn't bought into it since pretty much the start. And I think it was a really, really positive thing for that lady. And it's all good today. So I'm going to hand you over to Marty. Marty, all yours.
Hello, good to be with you. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to be, well, first of all, you can't say we don't put on an atmospheric video for you. And because of the nature of the topic, supernatural, true stories, hence all of this. So, are you settled down? Have you got your coffee or your cup of cocoa? Your biscuits, are you ready? Good. We shall begin. I'll begin with, it's true stories of the supernatural. Now, firstly, not everybody believes in these things. And my purpose is not to convince anyone necessarily. It's simply to relay, these are things that happened to me, happened to relatives, happened to people I know, and I'm just relaying some of these incidents. The first would be related to my dad, Gerald. He, as a little boy, when he lived in Mulberry Street in Leicester, off the New Walk, he ascended the staircase one evening, and in his own words, he was confronted in the distance down the corridor with an ugly looking monster, in his own words. Now, all his life, when we challenged him on this, my sister, oh, he must have been imagining it, Dad. He says, no, I saw what I saw. Has this been your experience? Have you seen anything? Had any sort of experience along these lines? I think of instances in my own life where I've sensed such an evil presence that I've actually kicked my foot out in bed at the presence in the room that came. Equally, I've known at times great presence of peace and love and joy that I ask myself, Martin, from where is this joy, this love, this peace coming from? With my first wife, called Janice, who has died now, she's gone to be with the Lord. But when she was in a teenager with another girl, they did the Ouija board on Janice's headboard on her bed. And a particular night, she relayed to me how there was a tremendous thunderstorm outside, lashing down of rain, and the bed, the casters that you would screw into the bed, you remember those legs on the bed that would screw in with casters. The whole thing was shaking and all manner of stuff, that she ran from the room to her mum. And her mum says, "Oh, you must have been dreaming, Janice." She says, "Come in bed." Well, she did, and the next morning they both went in the room, and what met their eyes was such a shock. The room was in a complete turmoil, things chucked about everywhere, the legs had broken off and were in different corners of the room, and the whole thing scared them that much. They got Janice's brothers-in-law, she has 3 sisters, two of the husbands, Les and Keith, came, took one look at the room and dragged the bed to the bottom of the garden. And they didn't particularly have any belief in anything as such. But what you tend to find, it's my experience, that because people are mocked or ridiculed or laughed at, they don't tend to share these things openly with people. But if you have a sympathetic ear and you listen to people and you acknowledge the fact that they what they have experienced is real to them, they will open up. And I think of a situation on the market when I was serving there. There was a lady behind with farm produce, from cut flowers and tomatoes and different things. I got speaking to her, and she just opened up and began talking. She says, "Yes, I in my home I see an apparition of an elderly lady often," she says, "and my daughter sees it as well." I think of a time in a taxi, speaking to a taxi driver. He said to me, I was driving down a country lane, and from a hedge stepped out a young lady with ginger hair. I thought I'd hit her, slammed on the brakes, stopped, got out, looked all over for her, and there was nobody to be found. I could not locate where she was. How does one explain such things as this? The next door neighbour, a young lad, when I was living at my dad's place, mum and dad's, called Lenny. Nice guy. We used to chat about many different things, had a lot in common, and he said to me one day, he had a Great Dane, and his great passion was martial arts and dogs. He would look at a dog like a judge from Crufts, and he's been in the ring and various things, taking pictures, photographs. Anyway, I see him one day on the street, and he says, "Martin," he says, I think I'm psychic. I said, "What makes you think this, Lenny?" He says, "Well, I've had 3 vision trances," he says, about people dying, and they've all come to pass. I said, "Well, tell me about them." He says, "Well, the first one, I was in bed, and whether I was dreaming or it was a trance of some sort, a vision of some sort," he says, "but I was lifted up overlooking a dog compound that I recognised." He says, "and these people that ran it weren't particularly nice people. I didn't like them." And he says, there was, in my vision, I saw police cars and ambulances, and some incident had happened inside this. And he found out from the Leicester Mercury within a week or 2 that some child or teenager had crawled in over the fence, they got in and was mauled to death by the dogs. That was the first one. I said, "Tell me the second one then." He says, "This was even more strange." He says, it was daytime. It was a summer's day. He says, "I was walking the Dane across the Narborough Road, the underpass, and I'd come up the other side and sweat was running in my eyes, and this car pulled up and it was glowing and it was shimmering. And I looked into the seat of the person who was leaning out to me with like a piece of paper, and I recognised him. as somebody who moved in the circle of friends I knew. I didn't particularly get on with him, but because of the friends I was with, I sort of suffered him in that sense. Anyway, I'm trying to get his attention that it's me, and Lenny in that sense, talking to him, and he didn't, he looked, as it were, through me, and he says, can you tell me this place, how to get? And so I looked at it and didn't recognise where he wanted to go. So the car then pulls away, and Lenny's baffled of what this means, or why this person was behaving in this way. Well, within a week's time period, looking in the Leicester Mercury, he discovered that this very chap had died in India backpacking on the back of a motorbike. And when he located the day it happened, it was the very day he was seeing this guy in the vision. Now that is well, they're all strange. And the last one, he says, I was again in bed late one night, looking out through the living room window, and I saw the next door neighbour, a chap called John, on the side that was the house was attached to, head and shoulders. And then there's not too long after this, there's a shriek and a scream from his wife, who was found, John, dead with a heart attack in bed. And it's woken up everyone in the vicinity in that sense. So, very strange incidents. Now I'm going to come to something of what I would term a psychic attack in my own house. So I was living at the time, again, with my first wife, Janice. The house was a new property built on a golf course. Nobody had ever lived in it before. We moved in around, there was 1992, somewhere around there. And at the time, the backdrop was I was helping a lot of people who had been in the occult, in different cults. I was preaching the gospel in the open air with another group of Christian evangelists. And I was busy in those things, and I was attracting spiritual trouble. And over a period of 1.5 months, these incidents that I'm going to relate began happening within the house. Now, in the end, it rattled me that badly. I got some Christian believers in to pray over the house, and it eventually was shut down. I hadn't been drinking, neither was I on drugs, and these incidents are just as they happened. I began to notice it was a small 2-bedroomed property, an end house with a walled garden. There was no chimney in the sense of a real fire or a gas fire. It was just radiators. So the first one was I began noticing in different rooms stains would appear on the ceiling and the walls, and I thought nothing of it to begin with, but they would disappear as quickly as they came and then appear somewhere else. And this went on for a good period of time. Then there was rattling door handles within the house. Now, we all know what a rattling door handle sounds like, and you know when something's within the house or outside the house. This was coming when we were in our bedroom from the downstairs living room door. I would run down, open, put the lights on, nothing. And this happened again, frequently, so much so, I would literally go to bed, in a sense like Ebenezer Scrooge, lock the doors, show me no more, couldn't bear it. We had an incident with a small salt and pepper pot in the kitchen that just disappeared. And me and my wife looked for them, scoured everywhere, searched everywhere, couldn't find them. And then one morning, they were just in an obvious place on the kitchen table, and there they were. Totally bizarre. I can utterly vouch that it was only me and my wife, and I can 100% say Janice was as baffled and bewildered as myself. And there was nobody playing tricks on one another, and these things were happening when she was in my presence as well. So, another one, you may be familiar with the film Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, when the UFO is over the house and the screws in the door, there's a child playing with the toys, the UFO comes down and the toys begin moving, and then the screws begin coming out of the door handle. I had this in numerous doors, the screws completely disappeared. They were taken out, they were gone. And again, no explanation whatsoever. I was opening a bottle of wine. You all familiar with the sort that you just go down like that with a handle, and it's got two handles that come down like that. I began doing the wine like that, pressed the handles like that, and both handles fell off upon the table. Really shocking to me in that sense. And then when we took the washing out the washing machine, the connecting bit of the bottle opener was found amongst the washing. As we took it, it fell out on the floor. On a quiet winter's evening, where there was no children playing, the TV was off. As I said, there's no chimney. Me and my wife are sitting there in the living room, and a noise manifests in the living room as we're sitting there. I can only describe it as a bird sound of, and it sounded like this. Then it stopped, and then it started again and stopped as quickly again. We both looked alarmed. We were looking around for a reason. Where was it coming from? Why was it? How could this be happening? No explanation whatsoever. Equally, there was at times strange smells of incense and faint distant chanting sound and movements of the bed. All these things totally freaked me out completely. And so, as I say, these things I can only relate as they happened. Real events with no human explanation. I think of the Ephesians chapter 6, 11 and 12, the Apostle Paul speaking. He says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood." Wrestling is a touch contest. Flesh and blood are people. But we wrestle against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. Good will always triumph over evil. These things, I know there are people who agree wholeheartedly there are experiences. Other people struggle. I'm not here to convince anyone, just to share. These things happened. I'll leave you with a book. The best book would be, please read the New Testament. You'll see endless examples of the Lord Jesus pushing around the works of the devil. And for a book to catch up on, Johanna Mickelson's book, The Beautiful Side of Evil, a psychic healer who came to know the Lord as well. Very interesting book. You can still get it on Amazon, I believe. And I leave you with that thought, and sleep well.
God bless.
God bless.
God bless.